The gleaming Patek Philippe on Julian Croft's wrist was a testament to his meticulously crafted life. Expensive, precise, and utterly flawless. Or so he believed. When his beautiful wife Amelia announced her pregnancy, joy was expected. But as her body changed, a cruel obsession with perfection consumed Julian. He saw not new life, but an imperfection, a stain on his pristine world. With callous words and a heart of ice, he cast his pregnant wife out. But 3 weeks later, a single call from Amelia's doctor wouldn't just shatter Julian's illusions. It would ignite a firestorm that would burn his gilded empire to ash. The penthouse apartment on Park Avenue floated above New York City like a modern-day Olympus, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing a panorama of glittering skyscrapers and the distant emerald smudge of Central Park. Inside, the air hummed with the quiet thrum of expensive technology and the subtle scent of imported lilies, always fresh, always perfectly arranged. This was Julian Croft's world, a meticulously curated stage for his equally meticulously curated life. Julian at 38 was the kind of man whose suits were always bespoke, whose handshake was firm to the point of bruising, and whose ambition had carved a swathe through the ruthless world of international finance, leaving him a veritable titan before 40. His company Croft Holdings was a name whispered with awe and a touch of fear in boardrooms across the globe. Amelia Dubois had entered this world 5 years prior, a whirlwind romance that had culminated in a wedding splashed across the society pages. She was then an art curator, her beauty as striking as her intellect, possessing a warmth that seemed for a time to thaw even Julian's notoriously cool demeanor. She was his perfect partner, elegant, poised, and a stunning accoutrement at his endless galas and business dinners. Julian often remarked with a proprietary gleam in his eye that they were the city's golden couple. For a while, Amelia had believed it. She'd loved Julian, or at least the man he presented to her in the early days. Charming, attentive, a protector. The opulence, while initially overwhelming, had become a backdrop to what she hoped would be a life filled with love and eventually children. The news of her pregnancy, confirmed by Lena Hansen at the Serafina Clinic for Women, the city's most exclusive and discreet maternity care facility, was for Amelia a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. She'd envisioned Julian's delight, the way his eyes, usually so sharp and calculating, would soften with paternal pride. His initial reaction was indeed one of satisfaction. An heir. It was appropriate, necessary even for the Croft dynasty he was building. He'd presented her with a diamond bracelet, so heavy it felt like a beautiful glittering manacle. "To my perfect wife, carrying my perfect child," the inscription read. The word perfect was beginning to send a small shiver down Amelia's spine. As the first trimester bloomed into the second, Amelia's body began its natural, miraculous transformation. The gentle swell of her belly, the subtle rounding of her hips, these were changes she embraced with a quiet wonder. Julian, however, did not. His observations started as seemingly innocuous comments, slivers of ice in the warm bath of her happiness. "Your dress seems a bit snug today, darling. Perhaps we should have a word with your tailor." Or, "Are you sure the chef is sticking to the nutritionist's plan, Amelia? We wouldn't want any unnecessary expansion." Amelia would force a smile, her heart sinking a little further each time. "It's just the pregnancy, Julian. It's normal." "Normal is a relative term, my dear," he'd reply, his gaze lingering on her changing form with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. But it wasn't admiration. It felt more like scrutiny, like she was a prized racehorse suddenly developing an unforeseen flaw. The real name that often punctuated Julian's demands for perfection was Savile Row. Every suit he owned, every coat, was a testament to the tailors there. He'd once sent back a cashmere sport coat because the lapel stitching was, in his words, a millimeter off from true artistry. This obsession with external flawlessness now turned towards his wife. One evening, as Amelia was dressing for a charity gala, an event Julian insisted they attend despite her increasing fatigue, he walked into their enormous dressing room. She was struggling with the zipper of a custom-made gown, a deep sapphire silk that had only weeks ago fit like a dream. "Having a bit of trouble?" Julian asked, his voice smooth, but with an underlying edge. He wasn't looking at her face, but at her reflection in the mirror, his eyes narrowed on the strain of the fabric across her back. "It's a bit tight," Amelia admitted, her cheeks flushing. "I think I've grown a little more than I anticipated this week." He walked closer, not to help but to inspect. He circled her slowly like an art critic, examining a statue for imperfections. His Patek Philippe watch, a rare, grand complications model he particularly favored, glinted under the soft lighting. "Perhaps a little more is an understatement, Amelia. This isn't just baby weight. This is carelessness." The word carelessness struck Amelia like a physical blow. "Julian, how can you say that I'm growing a human being? Our child deserves a mother who maintains a degree of discipline," he retorted, his voice losing its silkiness, replaced by a cold displeasure. "I have an image to uphold. We have an image. Your current state is becoming problematic." Tears pricked Amelia's eyes. "Problematic? My pregnancy is problematic for you. Your handling of it." "Yes," he snapped. "Look at yourself. You're letting yourself go. What will people say? What will my business partners think? That Julian Croft can't even manage his own household?" Amelia sank onto the velvet ottoman, the unzipped dress gaping. The beautiful room, filled with designer clothes and priceless jewels, suddenly felt like a luxurious prison. The lilies on the vanity seemed to mock her with their unchanging perfection. "I'm eating healthily, Julian. The doctor says I'm fine, the baby is fine." Dr. Hanson caters to women who can afford to be complacent, Julian sneered. "I expect more. I demand more." He tapped the face of his Patek Philippe. "Time is ticking, Amelia. Get yourself under control, before I lose my patience entirely." He turned and left, leaving Amelia alone with her reflection, a woman who was starting to look less like a cherished wife and more like a failing project. The golden couple's shine was flaking away, revealing something cold and ugly underneath. The cracks were no longer subtle. They were deepening into chasms, and Amelia was terrified of the abyss that lay below. The weight of his expectations, far more than the weight of her growing child, was becoming unbearable. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in Julian Croft's particular brand of cruelty, a slow, deliberate dismantling of Amelia's self-worth, all under the guise of concern and maintaining standards. The Park Avenue penthouse, once a symbol of their shared success, transformed into a battleground where Amelia's changing body was the territory under siege. Julian's comments escalated from snide remarks to outright demands. He hired a new, stricter nutritionist, a stern woman named Miss Albright, who presented Amelia with color-coded charts and portion sizes that seemed better suited to a runway model than a pregnant woman in her second trimester. Meals became an ordeal with Julian, often watching her eat his fork, poised his eyes, scrutinizing every mouthful. "Are you sure that's on Ms. Albright's approved list?" "Amelia, remember discipline is paramount." Her wardrobe was overhauled. Garments deemed unflattering or too matronly disappeared, replaced by a curated selection of severely tailored maternity wear that Julian insisted would minimize the damage. He spoke of her pregnancy not as a miracle, but as an unfortunate temporary disfigurement that needed to be managed and concealed as much as possible. Amelia found herself retreating, her natural effervescence dimming with each passing day. She made excuses to avoid social engagements. The thought of parading her growing bump under the critical eyes of Julian's associates, and Julian himself, filling her with anxiety. She knew they weren't just looking at her. They were gauging Julian's reaction, his control. The whispers in their elite circle were subtle but sharp, like tiny shards of glass. One afternoon, Chloe, Amelia's closest friend from her gallery days, came to visit. Chloe, with her bohemian style and refreshingly down-to-earth perspective, took one look at Amelia's haunted eyes and the meticulously arranged, joyless nursery Julian had commissioned, all muted greys and whites devoid of warmth, and her expression grew concerned. "Ames, are you okay?" Chloe asked, her voice gentle, as she took Amelia's hand. "You look fragile." Amelia tried to smile, but it felt like a grimace. "Just tired, Chloe. Pregnancy, you know." "I know pregnancy," Chloe said, her gaze unwavering. "I also know Julian, and I know that look in your eyes. It's the same look you had after your father passed, like you're carrying the weight of the world." Amelia's composure began to crumble. He has very high standards, Chloe, for everything, for me. Standards for what Amelia, for how a pregnant woman should look. Does he think you're a show pony he needs to keep in prime condition? Chloe's voice was laced with an anger Amelia rarely heard from her easygoing friend. "This isn't about standards. It's about control. It's cruel." Amelia pulled her hand away, a flicker of defensiveness, a conditioned response. "He doesn't mean to be cruel. He's just stressed. Business is demanding. And growing his child isn't," Chloe countered. "Ames, this isn't right. What you're describing, it's emotional abuse." The words hung in the air, stark and undeniable. Amelia had skirted around them in her own mind, but hearing Chloe say them aloud was like a splash of icy water. She couldn't refute it. The constant criticism, the monitoring, the implication that her body's natural processes were a personal failing. It was a relentless siege on her spirit. The breaking point arrived during Amelia's 28th week of pregnancy. She was noticeably larger now, the curve of her belly prominent and undeniable. She felt the baby kick a small, fluttering reassurance that she clung to in the face of Julian's increasing hostility. He had been particularly agitated all week, a major deal in Hong Kong, showing signs of unraveling. His temper, always simmering beneath the surface, was now dangerously close to boiling over. He'd summoned her to his study, a cavernous room lined with dark wood and leather-bound books he never read. His desk, a massive slab of polished mahogany, was usually clear save for his laptop and a minimalist Vacheron Constantin desk clock, another emblem of his obsession with precision and luxury. Tonight, however, it was littered with papers, and his tie was loosened, a rare sign of disarray. "Sit," he commanded, not looking at her as she lowered herself carefully into one of the stiff leather armchairs opposite him. He finally raised his eyes, and they were cold, devoid of any warmth or affection. "I've been looking at the calendar. The Atherton charity ball is in 3 weeks. It's a crucial event for the New Asia Fund. I need you there, looking your best." Amelia's heart sank. "Julian, I'll be over 7 months pregnant. I'm not sure." "You're not sure you can present a respectable appearance?" he interrupted, his voice rising. "Is that what you're telling me? After all the resources I've poured into managing your condition." "It's not a condition, Julian. It's a pregnancy." Her voice trembled, but a spark of defiance ignited within her. "And I am doing my best, but my body is changing as it's supposed to." "Supposed to?" He laughed, a harsh, mirthless sound. "According to whom? Some textbook for average people?" "You are not average, Amelia. Or at least you weren't." He stood up, pacing in front of the window, the city lights casting him in a demonic silhouette. "I saw you this morning. You looked swollen, unkempt almost. That dress you were wearing was a disgrace. It made you look enormous." Tears welled in Amelia's eyes, hot and furious. "I am enormous, Julian. I'm carrying your child." "What do you expect?" "I expect the woman I married," he roared, slamming his hand down on the mahogany desk. The Vacheron Constantin clock rattled. The elegant, poised woman who understood the importance of image of perfection. Not this bloated emotional creature you've become. The cruelty of his words stole her breath. "How dare you?" she whispered, rising unsteadily to her feet. "I dare because it's the truth," he spat, advancing on her. "You've let yourself go completely. You're an embarrassment. I can't have you by my side looking like that. You're ruining everything I've built." "I'm ruining it," Amelia cried, her voice cracking. "By having your baby. Is that how little our child means to you? Is that how little I mean to you?" Julian's face was contorted with rage. "You mean nothing to me if you can't even maintain simple self-control. You're a liability, a flaw in the design." He stopped inches from her, his eyes blazing. "I want you out, Amelia." The words hung in the air, cold and final. "What?" she choked out, disbelieving. "You heard me. Out. I can't stand the sight of you anymore. Pack your things. I'll have my lawyers draw up the papers. Consider this your severance from the Croft lifestyle." He gestured dismissively towards the door. "Go, now. Before I say something No, I won't regret it at all." Amelia stared at him, her mind reeling. This couldn't be happening. This was Julian, her husband, the father of her unborn child. But the man standing before her was a stranger, a monster sculpted from ambition and vanity. "Julian, please," she began, a desperate plea. "Don't beg, Amelia. It's unbecoming." He turned his back on her, gazing out at his kingdom of lights, his profile as hard and unforgiving as the granite of the skyscrapers. "My driver will take you wherever you want to go. Just ensure it's far away from here." Numbly, Amelia turned and walked out of the study, each step an agonizing effort. The beautiful penthouse, her gilded cage, now felt like a tomb. The scent of lilies was cloying, suffocating. As she passed the hall mirror, she caught a glimpse of her reflection. A pregnant woman, her face streaked with tears, her eyes wide with shock and a dawning, terrifying understanding of the abyss Julian had just thrown her into. The unraveling was complete. She was alone. The polished marble lobby of the Park Avenue building, usually a symbol of arrival and prestige, felt like the gateway to an icy exile as Amelia stepped out of the private elevator for the last time. Julian's driver, a stoic man named Peterson, who had witnessed years of the Crofts' public facade, stood by a sleek black Bentley, his expression unreadable. He didn't meet her eyes as he opened the door. Amelia had packed hastily, her hands shaking her mind a maelstrom of disbelief and a pain so profound it felt like a physical wound. She'd taken only a few personal belongings, some clothes that actually fit her burgeoning belly, and a small worn teddy bear, a relic from her own childhood she'd saved for the baby. Julian hadn't emerged from his study. No goodbye, no last look, just the chilling finality of his decree. "Where to Mrs. Croft?" Peterson asked, his voice neutral, as if he were merely chauffeuring her to another one of Julian's endless social obligations. The question hung in the opulent silence of the car. Where could she go? Her parents were gone. Her social circle was Julian's circle, a constellation of people who orbited his wealth and power. The thought of their pity, or worse, their whispered judgments, was unbearable. Then she remembered Chloe. Chloe, who had seen the truth in her eyes. Chloe, who lived in a vibrant, slightly chaotic apartment in Greenwich Village, a world away from Julian's sterile perfection. "Greenwich Village," Amelia managed, her voice barely a whisper. "I'll give you the address." The Bentley glided through the city streets, each familiar landmark, a fresh stab of pain. This was the city where she'd fallen in love, built a life, and dreamed of a family. Now it felt alien and hostile. Chloe lived on a street lined with brownstones and leafy trees, a welcome contrast to the steel and glass canyons of Midtown. When Amelia, tear-streaked and clutching a single suitcase, appeared on her doorstep, Chloe's warm embrace was the first genuine human comfort that Amelia had felt in months. "Oh, Ames," Chloe breathed, ushering her inside. "That bastard! That absolute bastard! Come in. Come in." Chloe's apartment was small but cozy, filled with books, art supplies, and the comforting aroma of brewing coffee. It was a haven of normalcy, of genuine life, so different from the cold, curated emptiness Amelia had left behind. Over endless cups of chamomile tea, the whole sordid story tumbled out. Julian's escalating cruelty, his obsession with her weight, the final brutal dismissal. Chloe listened, her expression shifting from outrage to a fierce, protective anger. "He threw you out pregnant because you're pregnant. The man is a monster, Amelia, a certifiable narcissist. I don't know what to do, Chloe." Amelia wept, the dam of her carefully constructed composure finally breaking. "I have nothing. He controls everything. The accounts, the properties. You have me," Chloe said firmly, squeezing her hand. "And you have that little one." She glanced at Amelia's belly. "We'll figure this out. First things first, you need to see your doctor. Not just for the baby, but for you. The stress he's put you under, it can't be good." Amelia had an appointment scheduled at the Serafina Clinic for Women the following week. The thought of going there alone without Julian's chauffeured car and the aura of being Mrs. Croft filled her with a new kind of dread. But Chloe was right. Her health and the baby's health was paramount now. The next few days were a blur of adjusting to her new reality. Chloe was a rock, helping Amelia navigate the immediate practicalities. She lent her clothes, cooked nourishing meals, and most importantly, listened without judgment. Amelia, for the first time in years, felt like she could breathe, even amidst the wreckage of her life. She contacted a lawyer. Chloe recommended a sharp, compassionate woman named Sarah Chen, who specialized in complex divorce cases. Sarah listened to Amelia's story with growing indignation and promised to fight for her and the child. The day of her appointment at the Serafina Clinic arrived. Chloe insisted on accompanying her. As they stepped into the clinic's hushed, elegant reception area, Amelia couldn't help but feel a pang of her old life. The women here were impeccably dressed, exuding an air of quiet wealth. She felt conspicuous in Chloe's borrowed, slightly too bohemian dress. Dr. Evelyn Hayes, a woman in her late 50s with kind eyes and a calm, reassuring demeanor, had been Amelia's obstetrician since the beginning of her pregnancy. She had always been professional, though Amelia had sometimes sensed a flicker of concern behind her polite smiles during appointments when Julian was present with his controlling questions and dismissive attitude towards Amelia's own queries. Today, Dr. Hayes greeted Amelia with a warm smile that seemed more genuine than usual. "Amelia, Chloe, come in." Once in the examination room, Amelia explained, haltingly at first, then with growing clarity, what had happened. That Julian had thrown her out, that she was now staying with a friend, that the stress had been immense. Dr. Hayes listened patiently, her expression becoming increasingly grave. "Amelia, I am so incredibly sorry you've had to endure this," she said, her voice filled with sincere empathy. "No woman should be treated this way, especially during pregnancy. The kind of stress you've described can have serious implications." She proceeded with the routine checkup: blood pressure, weight, listening to the baby's heartbeat. Amelia's blood pressure was elevated, a fact Dr. Hayes noted with a frown. "Your pressure is higher than I'd like, Amelia, and while your weight gain is perfectly normal for this stage, especially with how you're carrying, I want to run some additional tests today. Given the extreme duress you've been under, we need to be thorough." An ultrasound was performed. Watching the grainy black and white image of her baby moving on the screen, its tiny heart flickering rapidly, brought fresh tears to Amelia's eyes. This was real. This was her child, innocent and entirely dependent on her. A fierce wave of protectiveness washed over her, solidifying her resolve. She would not let Julian's cruelty define her or her child's future. "The baby's growth seems on track," Dr. Hayes said, her focus on the screen. "Heartbeat is strong." Then she paused, maneuvering the transducer. That's interesting." Amelia's breath caught. What is it?" Dr. Hayes was silent for a moment longer, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Amelia," she said, turning to her with a gentle but serious look. "There's something I didn't pick up on previous scans, or perhaps it wasn't as clear. It seems you've been carrying a bit more than we initially thought." Chloe leaned forward, her hand instinctively going to Amelia's shoulder. "What do you mean?" Amelia asked, her heart pounding. Dr. Hayes smiled a small, tentative smile. "Amelia, it appears you're not just having one baby. You're having two. You're pregnant with twins." Amelia stared at her, speechless. Twins. The excessive weight gain Julian had berated her for the reason he had called her bloated and undisciplined. She was carrying two babies. A hysterical laugh, tinged with tears, bubbled up from her. Twins. It wasn't a flaw, it was a double blessing. But Dr. Hayes's expression quickly sobered again. "This is wonderful news, of course, Amelia, but a twin pregnancy inherently carries more risks, and given your elevated blood pressure and the recent stress, we need to be extra vigilant. I want you on modified bed rest for now, and we'll need to monitor you very closely. There are some further tests I need to send off, just to be comprehensive." The news of twins was a shock, a joyful, terrifying, vindicating shock. But as Amelia left the clinic with Chloe, a new anxiety settled in. She was now responsible for two lives, and she was doing it alone with an uncertain future and an ex-husband who had shown himself capable of unimaginable cruelty. The glimmer of hope, the double miracle growing inside her, was tinged with the shadow of the challenges ahead. But for the first time in a long time, Amelia also felt a surge of strength. She wasn't just Julian Croft's discarded wife. She was Amelia Dubois, and she was about to become a mother of 2. The 3 weeks that followed the revelation of the twin pregnancy were a strange mix of anxiety, burgeoning hope, and a surprising sense of peace for Amelia. Confined mostly to Chloe's comfortable couch under doctor's orders for modified bed rest, she had time to think, to grieve, and to begin planning for a future she hadn't envisioned. Chloe was her guardian angel, ferrying her tea and healthy snacks, reading aloud from novels, and handling communication with Sarah Chen, the lawyer. Sarah was making progress. She had formally notified Julian's legal team of Amelia's situation and her intent to file for divorce, seeking full custody and substantial child support, especially now given the twin pregnancy and Amelia's high-risk status, requiring specialized care. Julian's lawyers had responded with characteristic arrogance, initially offering a paltry, insulting settlement, clearly underestimating Amelia's resolve and the changing circumstances. Amelia's focus, however, was on the upcoming follow-up appointment with Dr. Hayes. The doctor had ordered a more detailed fetal assessment and some genetic screening standard for multiple pregnancies, but carrying an extra weight of worry for Amelia, given the stress she'd endured. The day of the appointment arrived grey and drizzly, mirroring Amelia's apprehension. Chloe, ever supportive, drove her carefully to the Serafina clinic. Dr. Hayes greeted them with her usual calm, but Amelia detected an underlying seriousness in her demeanor that set her nerves on edge. "Amelia, Chloe, thank you for coming in. I have the results from the tests we ran." They sat in Dr. Hayes's comfortable office, the framed medical degrees on the wall suddenly seeming very imposing. "The good news first." Dr. Hayes began, offering a small, reassuring smile. "Both babies are growing steadily. Twin A, who is slightly larger, and Twin B. Their heart rates are strong and their basic anatomy scans are looking good." Amelia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Oh, thank God." "However," Dr. Hayes continued, her expression becoming more somber, "the detailed screening has revealed a concern with Twin B. It appears baby B has a congenital heart defect. It's a condition called tetralogy of Fallot. It's serious, Amelia, and will require surgical intervention, likely multiple surgeries after birth, and potentially ongoing specialized cardiac care throughout childhood." The room seemed to tilt. Amelia gripped Chloe's hand, her knuckles white. A heart defect. One of her precious babies. "Oh my God," she whispered. Is it because of the stress? Did I do this?" "Absolutely not, Amelia," Dr. Hayes said firmly, her voice full of compassion. "These conditions are congenital, meaning they form early in fetal development. It is nothing you did or didn't do. These things just happen sometimes." She paused, then continued. "There is something else. The genetic screening also flagged a rare recessive genetic marker that both you and the biological father would need to carry for it to manifest as a specific syndrome in one of the children, which can sometimes be associated with such heart conditions. It's not definitive for the syndrome itself without further testing on the baby after birth and on you and Julian, but the marker for the potential is there. And this particular marker is also linked to an adult-onset neurological condition in carriers." Amelia's mind struggled to process the information. A heart defect, surgeries, a rare genetic marker. Adult-onset neurological condition. 4. For carriers like me or Julian. "Potentially, yes," Dr. Hayes confirmed gently. "It's something that carriers should be aware of and screened for as they get older. The more pressing concern right now, of course, is baby B's heart and ensuring the best possible outcome. The neonatal cardiology team here at Serafina is excellent. We're talking about significant medical expenses, specialized care." Chloe, ever practical even in crisis, asked, "What are the chances of a full recovery for baby B?" With the right interventions, many children with tetralogy of Fallot go on to lead full and healthy lives, Dr. Hayes explained. But it will be a challenging road, particularly in the first few years, and the costs, as I mentioned, will be substantial. Amelia felt a wave of nausea. Julian, with his obsession with perfection, with his dismissal of her condition. How would he react to news of an imperfect child, a child requiring vast sums of money for medical care? The irony was a bitter pill. It was Sarah Chen, Amelia's lawyer, who orchestrated how the news would reach Julian. After a detailed consultation with Amelia and Dr. Hayes, with Amelia's consent, Sarah drafted a formal letter to Julian's legal team. It outlined the diagnosis of twins baby B's serious heart condition, requiring extensive and costly medical intervention, and the potential genetic implications for Julian himself, subtly hinting at the adult-onset neurological condition Dr. Hayes had mentioned. The letter included estimated costs for baby B's care figures that ran into the high 6, possibly 7 figures for the initial years alone. It also reiterated Amelia's demand for full custody and a revised, significantly larger settlement to ensure the lifelong well-being of their children, particularly the specialized needs of twin B. The letter landed on Julian Croft's massive mahogany desk like a ticking time bomb. Julian, already incensed by Amelia's defiance and the escalating demands from her lawyer, had been in a foul mood for weeks. The Hong Kong deal was still precarious, and his carefully controlled world felt like it was fraying at the edges. He'd dismissed Amelia's initial legal threats as hysterics. He'd provide a reasonable amount, enough to silence her, and then erase her and her inconvenient pregnancy from his life. He read Sarah Chen's letter, his brow furrowing. "Twins," he scoffed. Just Amelia's luck to double down on her leverage. Then he reached the part about baby B's congenital heart defect. Tetralogy of Fallot, surgical intervention, ongoing specialized care. The words swam before his eyes. Imperfect, a defective child, his child. The estimated costs were staggering. But it wasn't just the money. It was the flaw, the imperfection. His heir, or one of them, was damaged. Then he read the section about the rare recessive genetic marker, the potential adult-onset neurological condition for carriers. For him. Julian felt a cold dread seep into his bones, a sensation entirely alien to him. Julian Croft, the epitome of strength and perfection, a carrier of a flawed gene, a potential ticking time bomb within his own perfect physique. He thought of his Patek Philippe, its intricate movements a marvel of precision. His own body, he now realized, could harbor a hidden catastrophic imperfection. His initial reaction was denial, then rage. He hurled the letter across the room. "Lies! She's making it up to extort me!" he roared to the empty study. He imagined Amelia smugly plotting this, using a sick child to ruin him. He picked up the phone and dialed his lead attorney, barking orders. "Get to the bottom of this. I want independent verification. This is a sham." But deep down, a sliver of terror had pierced his armor. He remembered his own father, a man Julian had always tried to surpass, who had suffered from a mysterious, debilitating illness in his later years, something the family never spoke about, attributing it to stress. Could it be connected? The next few days were a blur of frantic activity for Julian's legal and medical team. They contacted the Serafina Clinic, demanding access to records which were only released with Amelia's tightly controlled consent, further infuriating Julian. They consulted their own high-priced medical experts. The news that came back was unequivocal. Dr. Hayes's diagnosis was accurate. Baby B did indeed have tetralogy of Fallot. The genetic marker was real. And yes, it carried implications for Julian himself, necessitating he undergo genetic testing. The destruction of Julian Croft began not with a bang, but with the quiet, irrefutable confirmation of medical science. His carefully constructed facade of perfection, already cracked by Amelia's departure, now showed signs of catastrophic structural failure. His image, the flawless tycoon, the man in control, was threatened. News like this, if it got out, would be devastating. His business partners, his rivals, the society vultures, they would pick him apart. Marcus Thorne, his longtime competitor, would have a field day. But it was more than public image. It was the personal horror. His child was imperfect. He himself might be imperfect, a carrier of a flaw. The irony was a cruel, relentless tormentor. His disgust for Amelia's weight gain, her natural maternal transformation, now seemed like a grotesque joke in the face of this. He had cast out his wife, the mother of his children, for the crime of being human, while he himself carried the seeds of genetic fallibility. He recalled Amelia's face tear-streaked and pleading as he'd ordered her out. He remembered his cold dismissal, his utter lack of compassion. The weight of his cruelty for the first time began to settle upon him not as a distant intellectual concept, but as a crushing personal burden. The news from the doctor, intended to secure Amelia and her children's future, had done more than that. It had planted a seed of terror in Julian's soul, and the tendrils of that fear were rapidly taking root, threatening to pull down everything he had built, starting with the man himself. His world wasn't just crumbling. It was being systematically, irrevocably destroyed from the inside out. The confirmation of Baby B's condition and the implications of the genetic marker sent Julian Croft into a spiral. His legendary composure evaporated, replaced by a volatile mixture of rage, fear, and a dawning, horrifying self-awareness. He retreated into his Park Avenue fortress, the silence of the opulent rooms now amplifying his inner turmoil. The Patek Philippe on his wrist felt heavy, its precise ticking a mocking reminder of the unpredictable, messy reality that had invaded his life. His first instinct, born of years of bulldozing obstacles, was to control the narrative, to fix the unfixable. He ordered his lawyers to spare no expense, to find the best doctors in the world, to somehow reverse the diagnosis, to make Baby B perfect. He demanded they prepare a counteroffer to Amelia, one that would ensure her silence by her cooperation and allow him to manage the situation with his customary ruthless efficiency. He even entertained the ludicrous notion of somehow proving the child wasn't his, a desperate last-ditch attempt to sever himself from this unwelcome imperfection. But reality for once was not amenable to Julian's will. The medical facts were immutable. His attempts to intimidate or buy off the Serafina Clinic or Dr. Hayes met with a wall of ethical professionalism. Amelia, guided by Sarah Chen, refused to be silenced or controlled. She wasn't interested in his money for her silence. She was interested in securing her children's future and holding Julian accountable. The news, as such news inevitably does in the rarefied circles Julian inhabited, began to leak. Whispers turned into rumors, then into hushed conversations at exclusive clubs and charity dinners. "Did you hear about Julian Croft? His wife, something about the baby." Marcus Thorne. Julian's slick, perpetually smirking rival was rumored to be discreetly fanning the flames, enjoying Julian's evident distress. The board members of Croft Holdings grew uneasy. Julian's erratic behavior, his unexplained absences from key meetings, his visible agitation, it was all noticed. The precarious Hong Kong deal, already on shaky ground, began to collapse as Julian's focus shattered. His reputation for icy control and infallible judgment, the very bedrock of his financial empire, was eroding. Then came the results of Julian's own genetic test. It confirmed what Dr. Hayes's report had suggested: he was indeed a carrier of the rare genetic marker. And worse, further investigation into his family medical history, which he now pursued with a desperate urgency, unearthed a pattern. His father's mysterious illness was almost certainly the adult-onset neurological condition associated with the marker. The same condition that now loomed in Julian's own future like a spectre. Julian Croft was not just a carrier of imperfection, he was its potential victim. The irony was complete, a cosmic joke played at his expense. His attempts to reconcile with Amelia were clumsy and self-serving. He didn't approach her with remorse, but with demands couched in panicked offers of financial support. Always with strings attached, always about controlling the optics. He sent emissaries, then flowers, then increasingly desperate, rambling emails. Amelia, now in her 3rd trimester, and under strict medical supervision, read his communications with a sort of weary detachment. The man who had so cruelly dismissed her and their unborn child was now begging for a semblance of connection, not out of love, but out of fear for his own legacy, his own health, his own collapsing world. "He doesn't get it, does he?" Amelia said to Chloe one afternoon, after reading a particularly self-pitying email from Julian. "He still thinks this is about money, about image. He's incapable of understanding anything else," Chloe replied, gently massaging Amelia's swollen ankles. "His entire world is built on those foundations, and now they're crumbling." The legal battle intensified. Sarah Chen, armed with the irrefutable medical evidence and Julian's increasingly desperate behavior, pressed hard. She painted a picture of Julian not as a concerned father, but as a man trying to mitigate damage to his reputation and financial standing. She argued for, and was granted, a court order compelling Julian to place a significant sum into a trust for the twins' medical care and upbringing, a sum that made even Julian, with his vast wealth, flinch. His attempts to contest Amelia's sole custody were systematically dismantled, his past cruelty and neglect now his undoing. The public fallout was swift and brutal. A disgruntled former employee of Croft Holdings, sensing an opportunity, leaked details of Julian's treatment of Amelia and the subsequent revelations about the baby's health to a prominent financial journalist. The story, "The Cracks in the Croft Empire, Perfection Paternity, and a Pending Payout," went viral. It detailed his callousness towards his pregnant wife, his obsession with image, and the ironic twist of his own genetic flaw. The narrative was irresistible, the mighty Julian Croft undone by his own hubris and hypocrisy. His business world turned on him. Partners distanced themselves. Investors pulled out. The carefully constructed edifice of Croft Holdings began to teeter. Marcus Thorne launched a hostile takeover bid, timing it perfectly to exploit Julian's vulnerability. The board, seeing the writing on the wall and Julian's inability to effectively lead, forced him to step down as CEO. Julian Croft, the man who had everything, found himself increasingly isolated. His friends melted away. His Park Avenue penthouse felt less like a palace and more like a luxurious prison, its silent rooms echoing with his failures. He would catch his reflection in the polished surfaces and see not the master of the universe, but a haunted, haggard man, his bespoke suits suddenly looking ill-fitting on his visibly stressed frame. The Patek Philippe still ticked on his wrist, but its precision now seemed to mock the chaos of his life. His destruction wasn't just financial or social, it was profoundly personal. He had prided himself on his perfection, his control. Now he was faced with the undeniable imperfection of his child and the terrifying potential for his own physical and mental decline. The cruelty he had inflicted on Amelia, dismissing her natural maternal changes as a disgusting flaw, now rebounded on him with devastating force. He had sown contempt and reaped a harvest of ruin. He would sometimes drive by Chloe's unassuming Greenwich village, building a pathetic, shadowy figure in his now less frequently chauffeured car. He never got out. What could he say? He had no words of genuine remorse, only a gaping emptiness where his pride used to be. He had thrown away the only woman who had ever truly loved him, and with her, his only chance at a real family, a real legacy beyond stock prices and steel towers. The comeuppance was not a single dramatic event, but a slow, agonizing unraveling. It was the daily erosion of his power, the contempt in the eyes of his former colleagues, the pitying glances of strangers, and the gnawing fear of his own genetic inheritance. It was the realization that in his relentless pursuit of a flawless life, he had destroyed any chance of a happy one. He was left with his vast, sterile apartment, his diminished fortune, and the bitter ashes of his shattered arrogance. The doctor's news had indeed destroyed him, not through malice, but through the simple, unyielding power of truth. While Julian's world imploded, Amelia's was in a strange way expanding. The fear and uncertainty hadn't vanished, but they were now interwoven with a steely determination and the profound burgeoning love for the two tiny lives she carried. Her days were no longer dictated by Julian's whims or the oppressive atmosphere of the penthouse, but by the rhythms of her pregnancy doctor's appointments and the quiet, unwavering support of Chloe. The Serafina Clinic became a second home. Dr. Hayes and her team were a beacon of calm expertise, guiding Amelia through the complexities of a high-risk twin pregnancy. The neonatal cardiologists explained baby B's upcoming surgeries with compassion and confidence, assuring Amelia that while the journey would be challenging, there was every reason for optimism. Amelia focused on their words, on the strength of her babies, and on her own resilience. In the final weeks of her pregnancy, Amelia moved into a modest but bright two-bedroom apartment that Sarah Chen had helped secure using funds from the initial emergency support order. Chloe, of course, helped her decorate, filling it with warmth, soft colors, and the promise of new beginnings. It was a world away from the cold grandeur of Park Avenue, and Amelia loved it. It was hers. The twins, a boy and a girl, arrived a few weeks early, as is common with multiple births. Amelia named them Liam Twin, a robust and calm, and Sophie Twin B Tiny, but with a surprisingly strong cry. Sophie was indeed born with tetralogy of Fallot, and was whisked away to the neonatal intensive care unit, almost immediately a tiny warrior preparing for her first battle. Amelia, recovering from a cesarean section, found a strength she didn't know she possessed. She divided her time between Liam's bassinet and Sophie's incubator, whispering words of love and encouragement to both. Chloe was a constant presence, as was Aunt Mariah, a kind, sensible woman, Amelia's late mother's sister, who had flown in from Vermont upon hearing the news, her calm practicality a soothing balm. Sophie's first open-heart surgery, performed when she was just 10 days old, was the longest, most terrifying day of Amelia's life. She sat in the waiting room, Liam cradled in Aunt Mariah's arms, Chloe pacing beside her, the minutes stretching into an eternity. When the surgeon finally emerged, his face tired but hopeful, and announced that the surgery had gone well, Amelia crumpled in relief, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. Julian was notably absent from this chapter. He had been served with the final divorce papers and the custody agreement, which granted Amelia full legal and physical custody. He was permitted supervised visitation under strict conditions if and when Amelia deemed it appropriate and not detrimental to the children's well-being. He had not contested. The fight, it seemed, had gone out of him. His lawyers had quietly agreed to the substantial child support and medical trust fund. His only communication had been a stilted formal note delivered by his attorney, acknowledging the birth and stating that funds had been transferred. There was no personal touch, no flicker of paternal feeling, only the cold mechanics of legal obligation. Sophie's recovery was slow but steady. There would be more surgeries, more challenges, but she was a fighter. Liam, meanwhile, thrived, a healthy, happy baby. Amelia, watching her children, felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. This was her wealth now. Not the cold gleam of diamonds or the silent approval of high society, but the warmth of Liam's small hand gripping her finger, the resilient beat of Sophie's mending heart, the unconditional love of her small, supportive circle. She started a blog, Sophie's Heart, chronicling their journey, offering support and information to other parents of children with congenital heart defects. It gained a quiet following, her honesty and resilience resonating with many. She even began to sketch again, her old passion for art rekindled, finding an outlet for the complex emotions that filled her days. Julian Croft, meanwhile, faded into a kind of self-imposed exile. His business empire was a shadow of its former self, carved up and sold off in pieces. Marcus Thorne now sat in Julian's old office, the Patek Philippe on his wrist, a newer, flashier model. Julian lived quietly, almost reclusively, in a smaller, though still luxurious apartment on the Upper West Side. He was rarely seen. Rumors occasionally surfaced about his health, his increasing paranoia about the ticking genetic clock within him. He was a man haunted by the ghosts of his own arrogance and the family he had so casually discarded. He did once attempt a supervised visit. Liam and Sophie were nearly a year old. Amelia agreed more for her children's potential future curiosity than for Julian's sake. He arrived looking older, grayer, his expensive suit hanging loosely on his diminished frame. He was awkward and visibly uncomfortable around the babies, who, sensing his unease, cried whenever he came near. He fumbled with a toy, his hands trembling slightly. He couldn't meet Amelia's gaze for long. The visit was short and deeply uncomfortable for everyone. He never requested another. Amelia, watching him leave that day, felt not triumph nor even anger, but a profound pity. He had everything the world valued: wealth, power, prestige. But in the end, he had nothing of true worth. He had mistaken the gilded cage for a kingdom, and in his desperate attempt to keep it pristine, had shattered the only real treasures it might have held. Years passed. Liam grew into a boisterous, kind-hearted boy. Sophie, after 2 more successful surgeries, was a spirited, intelligent girl with a mischievous smile and a faint scar down her chest that Amelia called her bravery badge. She required ongoing monitoring, but her prognosis was excellent. Amelia, with the help of the trust fund and her own burgeoning career as a writer and patient advocate, provided them with a life full of love, laughter, and genuine security. She eventually found love again with a kind pediatrician she met through Sophie's specialist, a man who cherished her and her children for exactly who they were. Julian Croft became a footnote in their lives, a cautionary tale. The doctor's news, delivered 3 weeks after he'd callously thrown Amelia out, hadn't just destroyed his world. It had, in a way, liberated Amelia to build a new one. A better one, founded not on the illusion of perfection, but on the enduring strength of love, resilience, and the messy, beautiful reality of life. Her real wealth was in the laughter of her children, the warmth of her home, and the peace in her own heart. Riches. Julian Croft, in his pursuit of a flawless facade, could never comprehend and would never possess. Julian Croft's obsession with a flawless image led him to cast away his pregnant wife Amelia for gaining weight, a cruel act that set in motion his own spectacular downfall. The doctor's news weeks later, revealing not only twins, but a serious health condition in one child, and a genetic bombshell for Julian himself, shattered his perfect world. It's a stark reminder that true wealth isn't measured in gold or prestige, but in compassion, love, and the messy, imperfect beauty of human connection. Amelia's journey from a gilded cage to a life of genuine fulfillment with her children shows us the incredible strength of the human spirit. If this story of betrayal, resilience, and ultimate justice resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories that explore the depths of human drama. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update.